Welcome everybody to Tropical Weather Update. It is about 8:30 a.m. on Monday, August the 28th, and this is an update specific to Tropical Storm Idalia. On the map right now is the goes east band 13 infrared satellite view of it, and we're going to go into all the details as to what the forecast track is, but let's start right now with what is Idalia doing currently. It is in the Caribbean Sea off the Yucatan Peninsula, and it is now beginning its trek to the north, which has been forecast. It's been kind of stationary for the past 24 hours. It is now beginning its trek to the north, and it will probably graze the very west coast of Cuba. Let's just look, though, here on this map to show you where the center is. The center's up here. So the center's not down here where all the convection is. And what that means is the storm is not yet organized and have a concentric center and eye yet. It will soon, but right now it is still a tropical storm and it has not developed into a hurricane with a perfect symmetry to it. That being said, the forecast is when it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, the conditions will be very favorable for rapid strengthening prior to it hitting the west coast of Florida somewhere. So let's take a look at the 5-day. Let me click off of this. This is the National Hurricane Center's forecast from 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time this morning. It has the latitude and longitude coordinates, which you'll also see scrolling on the bottom of the screen. Right now it has maximum sustained winds of 65 miles an hour, so it has strengthened from a wind speed standpoint, but from an organizational standpoint it still does not look great to me. But that doesn't matter because within 24 hours this will be a hurricane, and as you can see on this map it shows an M now, which the prior forecast track by the National Hurricane Center just showed an H, which means they expected it to be a Category 1 or maybe 2 hurricane. Now they're expecting this to be a Category 3 hurricane before it makes landfall somewhere on the west coast of Florida by Wednesday morning, most likely, or sometime around noon on Wednesday, I think is where they're really focusing on landfall. Maybe a little earlier than that in the morning, 9 a.m. in the morning. Let's now look at the no, I do not want to look at that. I want to look at the intensity forecast. As you can see, and this is from tropicaltidbits.com, previously they were not showing this to be a Category 3 hurricane, but now almost all the models, or many of the models, are showing Category 3 intensity. So that trend is upward, and this is the peak of hurricane season. So if we're going to have a strong hurricane, now is the time, and the Gulf of Mexico waters are as warm as they get. The conditions should be favorable. They do not expect any wind shear. I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes a Category 4 or 5 hurricane at some point. It doesn't mean it will be that at landfall, but at its maximum, I can't see why it couldn't be a Category 5 hurricane at some point in the Gulf of Mexico. We've seen these many times. There's really nothing, in my opinion, that would stop it from becoming a Category 5. That being said, there's always eyewall replacement cycles and fluctuations, and sometimes storms weaken right before they make landfall, like Katrina did. It was a massive Category 5 storm, but then became a 3 by the time it made landfall. That being said, once these storms get very, very large, they circulate a lot of water around them, and that makes the storm surge almost just as bad, whether or not it decreases in strength as it makes landfall. Let's take a look here at the storm surge forecast, and you can see it has up to 11 feet from the Osceola River down, and I can't pronounce any of this, but all along the Big Bend area of Florida, basically anywhere from Apalachicola all the way to Tampa could receive some significant storm surge. All right, so we've done that. Let's read some of the discussion points from the National Hurricane Center. I like to read these because it gives you some insight into what the forecasters are thinking. First thing they say here is that it is intensified overnight. So although it doesn't look that impressive on satellite, the NOAA aircraft and buoys have determined the wind speeds have increased. The next thing it says is it seems like Idalia is finally on the move. So it's been stationary for the past 24 hours. Now it is starting to move northward, which was expected. Now, the storm is expected to move faster to the north, northeast, and northeast by early Wednesday due to a deeper trough that is expected to swing across the midwestern United States. The new National Hurricane Center track forecast is quite close to the last one, with little significant changes in the track guidance. Okay, so I'm going to show you the model runs. They have not been changing very much. It's very consistent, which is good. There's no trends to the east or the west at this point, which I will always be keeping an eye on. But for now, the forecast track has been pretty consistent, which is good. It means their confidence level is pretty good. Unlike Ian last year, which had a major shift to the south and to the east right before landfall, the track guidance was wrong on that storm. So that is an important point, and it says here it should be emphasized that only a small deviation in the track could cause a big change in Idalia's landfall location in Florida due to the paralleling track to the west coast of the state. So again, if you look here, that whole cone includes Tampa. So if you live in Tampa, Florida, you are not out of the woods here, even though the center of the storm is forecast to be going closer to the Cedar Key area. Even a slight shift to the east and you're right in the crosshairs in Tampa. So actually, if I'm anywhere from Fort Myers all the way to Apalachicola, I'm getting my hurricane preparations done right now. If the storm does, though, stay on the track that they expect it to, that's good news for the state of Florida, because I'm just looking here, like anywhere from St. George Island all the way through here is kind of where they forecast the storm is likely going to hit, probably somewhere around the Cedar Key area. Maybe around the Steinhatchee to Cedar Key area. If this is where the storm makes landfall, the worst impacts are going to be in this area, and this is not the most populated coastal area of Florida. Unlike if you go south of here, once you get to Newport Richey, Clearwater, and then all the way south to Fort Myers and Naples, we're talking about massively populated areas. These are not as populated areas. Steinhatchee, Fowler's Bluff, Cedar Key. The people who live there, I pray for you guys, because this is going to be a bad storm, most likely, wherever it hits. But Alligator Point, St. George Island, Hurricane Michael had a similar track over near Mexico Beach, and that still caused a lot of damage and a lot of destruction. But again, the population areas in this part of the state of Florida are not the largest in our state. Obviously, the East Coast, and then once you get down to Clearwater and south, are very high population areas, and displaces more people, more chance of more people dying or being injured in a storm like this. But this is really what they expect. But again, if it just even deviates a little bit over here to the east, maybe comes in north of Tampa, you're still going to wind up with a lot of storm surge, because the counterclockwise circulation pulls the water anywhere to the right of where it makes landfall is going to be the worst storm surge. And so a slight deviation in this course could cause some significant storm surge in the Tampa Bay area. And you can see, I think on our next video, once this storm starts to get closer to land, I'll pull out the National Hurricane Center actual storm surge maps. But that's a nightmare scenario if it does come in a little bit further to the east and south of the current forecast for the Tampa Bay area. It will flood a lot of the coastal areas in that area. All right, what else do I have to show you here? Let's look at the model track guidance. This was from yesterday at 12Z, and I just want to go through, each run of this to show you if there's any change in the trend, whether it's trending west or trending east. This was yesterday, then also yesterday. This was the first run today at 00Z, and then this is the current run at 06Z. And it hasn't really shifted much. I mean, you're seeing some outliers, but again, just going from model run to model run, it really looks like the Cedar Key area is the center of where all of these models are showing. And it's been like that now for the last 2 days. So that's good news from the standpoint of forecasting. But again, we're still pretty far out from the storm. I mean, if it's expected to hit Wednesday, that's at least 48 hours away. These tracks do change. So I'll do another video soon, maybe later today or early tomorrow morning, and we will update these model tracks to see if things have shifted at all. This is the tropical storm force wind probabilities, and you can see that it's very highly likely that tropical storm force winds at the very least are going to affect the west coast of Florida from Sarasota northward. So if you live in Sarasota, Tampa, Fort Myers, you should still be preparing as if this storm is going to hit you, because you are going to get some storm surge and some tropical storm force winds most likely as the center of the storm parallels the west coast of Florida. And these are the actual watches and warnings. It's mostly hurricane watches from Fort Myers, from Naples all the way to Apalachicola. Approximately on this map is under a hurricane watch as well as a storm surge watch. So even the National Hurricane Center is recognizing they don't want people in Naples to let their guard down like they may have done, or in Fort Myers like they did last during Ian, just because the center of the storm is forecast to go north of you. Any shift in the track, as well as the storm effects, will still affect you regardless of where the center of the storm is. So again, if you're in Fort Myers, Florida, you are under a hurricane watch. You should be preparing for this storm, even though we will hope for the best that it will move north and more toward the less populated areas of the Big Bend area and Cedar Key. Although, people in Cedar Key, I feel for you, because this might be a bad one. This might be a bad one. All right. I don't think I have anything else for this update. Please be prepared if you live anywhere along the west coast of Florida or the Gulf Coast of Florida, from Apalachicola east, Tallahassee, Gainesville, and the inland areas as well. Orlando should be ready to receive some impacts from this storm. And keep an eye on NOAA Weather Radio, your local TV and radio, and internet sources for updates on this storm. Hopefully this video, though, has helped you see some things maybe that some of the other videos have not shown yet. I will be back and be in constantly reviewing the situation to see if any updates are warranted. But thanks for tuning in. If you could give me a like, I'd appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and we'll be back soon. Thank you.